Connor is here to do a mailbag with me. We've got three great questions from our Discord channel. You can go join that Discord, find the link to the Discord in the description of this podcast or in our YouTube descriptions. The link is there. You can always join through that link as well. And that's how we're going to be taking mailbag questions from here on out. As people in the Discord channel, the mailbag channel we have on there. Connor made it look all fancy, so it's all nice and organized, nice and neat in our Discord, and lots of conversation going on in our Discord as well, just about literally
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of talk in the basketball talk channel,
Yes,
and I've been like, I'm not going to venture in there because I have no clue what people are saying.
right. I'm like competent, I guess, on uh basketball, but not confident in basketball, if that makes sense. Like I know what people are talking about, and I think I know what I'm talking about, but I'm not confident enough to go in there and talk about it. I like the Orlando Magic. That's not a very good basketball team. So I don't I don't spend a lot of time talking about other teams because I do know a decent amount about the Magic just because that's a team I follow. But we are here not to talk about our Discord, as we just did like a minute and a half ad for our Discord, essentially. We've got some good mailbag questions here. This first one is from Christian Gumminger. He asked, who are the top three bubble players to make the roster? And when I first started filling out this question, I thought, okay, top three to miss the roster. That's kind of how I interpreted it the first time. And then I went back and reread it and I said, oh, to make the roster. And then I started looking at my list and I was like, you know what? I think these actually still work out. I still think that these work. So, Connor, who do you have as your top three bubble players?
It's kind of hard because I think the Chiefs kind of turned over a bit of their depth this year to really truly like nail down who the starting 53 will be. But for me, I went with Brett Veach is talking up this guy a lot, so I'm gonna believe the hype. I went Antonio Callaway as my first one because he was an uber talented wide receiver for the Browns, but he had some off the field issues, multiple off the field issues, and so he got let go of from that team. And so if he kind of has his head on straight, which the Chiefs seem to love to bet on for guys, he has a lot of talent. So I think he could sneak onto this roster that is probably looking for depth at wide receiver at the like fifth wide receiver spot for somebody to step up and maybe take it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I know that offense was one of those positions or one of those, I guess, groups where I was looking at and I was like, oh, I don't know if I see a whole lot of guys, to make the roster there that would be like unexpected. But Antonio Callaway is a good one. I know that you said, how did you forget about Antonio Callaway? Brett Veach talks about him every press conference. I was like, that's a good point. I've got for my offensive guy, Shane Buechele, the quarterback, to make the roster. I think he can surprise some people, make the roster, become the backup quarterback. I think that would be really interesting come season time. The Chiefs did sign him for $160,000 their base salary and a $15,000 bonus. So they have money invested in a backup quarterback here. He was an undrafted free agent this year. I think it could be he's a fun guy if you watch him on tape to play quarterback, and could really be a practice squad guy, I think, starting out, maybe to simulate other quarterbacks in the league. I think that was kind of the big conversation about Buechele when they signed him,
Yeah, and also that was a lot of money for a UDFA
right?
for that the Chiefs paid out for him. They beat out apparently like 7 teams, I think, if I remember correctly,
Hmm.
which is kind of weird that they spend so much money on like backup quarterbacks like that in the UDFA market. But to each their own. I mean, they'll eventually need a replacement for Chad Henne, and why not Shane
Right.
Buechele?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. So, number two, who do you have as number two on your list, Connor?
It's kind of a dual answer. It's whoever wins the battle between Jet McKinnon and Darwin Thompson.
Mm,
I don't think the Chiefs are going to take four running backs or keep four running backs on the final roster. So one of them is going to win the job, and it'll be about whether Darwin, the incumbent technically on the
right.
roster, can beat out Jet McKinnon. I personally think Jet McKinnon is probably more talented,
Mhm.
but he is older, coming off those injuries he had with San Francisco. He did look fine when he played last year for the 49ers. He looked decent, especially considering he came off like two injuries. So I think between those two, somebody will be kept. I don't really have an inclination of which one, but whoever does keep it, I think they'll actually see meaningful snaps too. So it's a
Yeah.
interesting, and it'll be a decision that actually leads to snaps for whoever wins it.
That's a position group I kind of got my eye on too, especially on the offensive side of the ball between Jerick McKinnon and Darwin Thompson. I think it's kind of assumed that Darwin Thompson is going to be cut. I think that's kind of the sentiment you get, at least on Twitter. Which you shouldn't take that very,
Twitter
very much, but
sentiment,
yeah,
the
the Twitter
last sentiment I
sentiment.
want to know about.
Exactly. But I think that Darwin Thompson will give him a run for his money. It's going to be, as you mentioned, I can't see them taking 4 running backs into the season on their 53 man. And I went with another position that seems like they added a few of these in the undrafted free agent at safety. Armani Watts, I think, is a guy who is on the bubble, and I think he can make the roster just because of his familiarity with the Spagnuolo system. I can't remember off the top of my head how many safeties they had. I think they added at least 2 safeties in undrafted free agent. See, DiCaprio
Mm.
Boodle being one of them, and then the kid
And the
from
guy from
Louisville,
BYU
and
and
the kid. So
BYU.
3. So it was 3 of them.
Yeah.
Um,
Boodle's a cornerback, I believe. So it'd be the
okay.
kid from BYU and character, Marlon character, which is
Yes.
a great name. I kind of hope he makes the roster just because of that.
Yeah, me too. But that room got crowded pretty quick. And I think after the draft, that is
It's
interesting.
hard to say how crowded it is when it's UDFA's.
Right.
I mean, like, I don't know how highly the Chiefs think of these two. It seemed like they hyped them up a bit. They already released a promo for a character. And they
Hmm.
were talking up we should stop saying the BYU guy and actually
Is it
say his
Zane
name.
Anderson, isn't it?
I think so. His name is not on Arlats. Great job. Yeah, Zane Anderson. You're right.
There we go.
So I think those two are interesting. I just
Yeah.
think it's hard to really rely on UDFA's doing anything, even though the Chiefs have had UDFA's contribute the last few years. You shouldn't rely on them or really think of them as much other than, hey, they'll be there for training camp and we'll
Right.
see. So I think Armani Watts probably has a good chance to make the roster, but if he gets beat out by them, I won't be too surprised. He's also a very good special teamer, so he
Hmm.
might just be somebody they keep because Dave Tube wants him.
And we've seen that happen with several players in the
Marcus
Chiefs
Kemp.
system. Marcus Kemp is a guy that we also talked about before the podcast. If we should throw him on this list here, he could be a practice squad guy. Same thing with Garrick Dieter. I feel like Tobe likes him on the special teams aspect of it, and he goes up every now and again and is on the Chiefs active roster because they do get 2 call-ups if they're on the practice squad, and he seems to always use those 2 call-ups in on the special teams realm of things. But Connor, last guy, who do you have on the bubble making the roster?
Um, this is really a put up or shut up year for him, so I'll say he puts it up, and it's Tim Ward.
Hmm.
I was curious. If you heard my keyboard, I was like, how many games has he played for the Chiefs the past few years? He's played 1 game um,
Wow.
in the regular season. So this is really a year for him to put up and actually show that he's ready to step in. And he has the depth chart's shallow enough where he can make the roster for sure. He'll be 24 at the start of the year, so he's not too old. So
Mhm.
he's in his formative years. He actually had a sack and 2 QB hits in that game he played in 2020. So I think he'll have to show that he belongs on the roster. And if he does, I think he'll definitely make the roster because defensive end's kind of a weird position for the Chiefs where they just have a bunch of guys.
Right.
He can be one of those guys. So we'll see how he plays in training camp. And I think he will be one of those bubble guys that will make it.
That was the week 17 game, right? Is the one he played in? That's the only game he's played in?
Let's see. You're calling me out on the spot. It's really
I
terrible.
know.
Tucker, I
Wouldn't
can't
be the
believe you're
last
doing
time.
this. Yes, it is. It was against the
Okay.
Chargers.
Yeah, that's what I thought he put in that week 17. It might have even got a start. But he did play some significant time. The Chiefs also had some injuries in that week 17 game that had to switch a bunch of stuff around
Right.
and get more people more playing time. A guy that I got that hasn't really seen a whole lot of playing time as of late is Colin Saunders. I think he is on the bubble, but I could see a realistic situation where he does make the roster. Again, it's one of those system familiarity things. He was a healthy scratch a lot of last year, and if you tell me to put money down on if I think Colin Saunders will make it or he won't make it. I'd probably put it on won't make it, but I think that there is a decent shot where he does make the roster just because of the system familiarity, as I said, and that you never know what can happen in front of him. Someone could get hurt, someone could not get
Yeah.
a concept or something like that. But Colin Saunders, there is a chance that he could be on this roster.
I'm curious if he could, because he was more projected 3 tech coming out of college. I'm curious if he could
Yeah.
move over to 1-0 and back up Derek Nottie, because I don't really think the Chiefs have somebody to do that right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what their plan is when he needs to come out of the game. Maybe they envision Colin Saunders doing that. I don't know if I've really seen him do well at the point of attack against double teams and all that. So I guess we'll see with that and what their plans are with him. But yeah, if he can fill that role, then he has a spot on
Yeah.
the roster. It's just about if he can do that role.
They got a whole lot of 3 techs on that defensive line group.
Yeah,
I don't even know if I could name another 1 tech other than Naughty. So I
there
think
isn't
that's
really one.
right. I think that's a really good point. If he can end up playing the 1 tech, then he'll be set. I think he can really find carve out a niche. I think we've had this conversation on the podcast before. How
Niche.
you say it? Niche on the
That's how
defensive
I
line
say it.
and find his way into some playing time, which he didn't get a whole lot last year. That will do it for today's podcast preview. If you enjoyed the preview, make sure to check out the full show out on your favorite podcast provider. Don't know how to find it? Go to smarturl.it/roughing. Got a splash page. You can find your favorite provider there and find the show there, or go into the search bar of your favorite show, type in Roughing the Kicker. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like. It really helps us out. If you enjoy the channel and the podcast as a whole, subscribe and obviously get that notification bell on because you don't want to miss any more podcast previews. We'll be back with another video soon. So until then, I'll talk to you next time.